How to play. Okay, now start.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, we cover a very important topic: why seeking knowledge is obligatory in Islam. We know it is obligatory, but we need to investigate why it is so. And here, as an example, in first Fardh, we'd be looking at first two words that were revealed, and we'll come to that. So if you get distracted, if you do not know how to understand those two words, we are started off in the wrong direction, wrong-headed. So the first verse, IQRA-the. So it is translated as read. Iqra means read, but I put on quote unquote for a good reason. Then in the name is also quote unquote of your Lord who created. So it's important to find out what is the meaning of this word Iqra. The Iqra word comes from the root Kaf, Ra, Alif. And the following derivative meanings we discuss. This root word occurs 88 times, and 74 times it refers to Quran itself. So it's such an important word that Quran itself is collection of Iqra, collection of them. So we have to understand. So if it simply says read, it makes no sense. Quran is read. Let's find out. There, right from the beginning, I cite this verse 4:119, and the relevance of this we'll discuss. So people say Iqra means read, and then we wonder, if Iqra is read, what was Allah's meaning? What did Allah mean when he said read? Then they made up these stories that there was angel Jibril had a green velvet, and it was written Iqra Bismillah, whatever, and that's what it meant, but it's completely false and it's not logical. Then we see long after in Surah Muzammil, Allah is again saying, Iqra, this is the top red ones. Faqra'u min al-Quran. So Iqra from Quran. So read, so-called read from Quran. So sure enough, they translate it as recite from Quran. See, recite is a different word. So now first time they translate as read in at the first word Iqra bismi rabbikal khalaq. And this time they are translating as recite. So if you go back, recite is a different word. Again, it is in Surah Muzammil. Allah uses the word Ratil Quran. So that's not Iqra. Yet, this is also recite, and the other one is also recite. So, sadly, it's not just in translation. People, even Arabs, particularly Arabs, do not understand the meaning of the word Iqra. Why I say particularly Arab? Because they have the arrogance that they know Arabic. And they are the most ignorant when it comes to Quranic verses. So in 2003, I came across a 900-year-old Arabic to Arabic dictionary. It's the oldest dictionary that ever made. And later on, it became online. If you look at that dictionary, you find the true meaning. So we'll first just outline the actual meaning, the scientific meaning of the word Iqra. Iqra is deduction, deduce, and it's a logical term. You know about deductive logic. This, what you call name, is actually trait. So we'll deal with the word ism first. In Surah Baqarah, verse 31, Allah is saying, He taught. Again, taught is another difficult word because actual Arabic is allama. So allama is giving somebody science of it, giving somebody else. It's not teaching. Teaching is not scientific. Training is. You can train somebody, but you cannot literally teach somebody. It has to come from him. Anyway, so Allah said, He taught Adam the names of all things. Imagine, if name, ism is name, what does it mean? Because Quran doesn't lie. It says names of ism of everything. Then He presented them to the angels and said, tell me the names of these if what you say is true, meaning you are, if you feel, because in verse 230, they kind of challenge Allah that you are going to make these humans, Khalifah on earth, they will shed blood, they will create facade. So Allah told them that I know what you don't know. Right after that, Allah is saying, challenging them, say, hey, if you know that much, tell me the names of this. So the word is repeated here. So if ism means trait, then it really makes sense. Because Alam certainly was not taught what is computer, what is Wikipedia, what is Donald Trump, right? He was taught the traits of everything. In traits of everything natural. The science of everything natural is called physics. If you look up the word physics, what is the root? Is physica in Greek, old ancient Greek. It means exactly that. So we translate that as nature science. So Allah taught names of everything available in nature, the traits of them. Now you come back to the hadith that says, when you have a child, you give him a good name. So this one is proper noun. And good education, and marry him when he reaches puberty. So there, why is Prophet saying that give him a good name? So it becomes synonymous with his trait. If you call somebody a bad guy, he's going to turn out to be bad because he would constantly remember that he's a bad guy. So it makes sense that really ism is a trait. And that's why this value of naming somebody where the only thing you can give to a child is his name. You realize that you cannot give him anything else. You have no power to give him anything else. So that's why Prophet Muhammad is saying that give them a good name. That's the minimum you can do. Again, good education. You cannot give good education when they're grown up. It's from age 0 to 7. That's the time you do the foundation. But that's another matter. So we settled the meaning of the word ism is trait. So now I'm coming to deduction, which is the meaning of IQRA. We know that you can look it up. Deduction has 2 points, a major premise and a minor premise. And that's why every deduction will have a definitive conclusion. It's not if, what if. If those 2 major and minor premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. It's not 90%. It's not like inductive logic where it becomes a probability. So I give you an example of the top one. Major premise is summer is always hot, right? You can assume that. They say, well, it's a premise. So we can say whatever you want. We'll look into that. And the minor premise is August is a summer month, right? I've asked many people from many countries, they all agree, yes, therefore August is hot. Of course, logical. But then we ask, is summer is always hot? Right? It's true, right? Yes. Summer is true. Summer is hot. The minor premise, August is the summer month. Is it true? Of course, it's not true in Southern Hemisphere. So the conclusion is false. It doesn't matter how amazingly true it sounds to you, it's not true. And look into that. So if you consider all these premises, the only true premise that is 100% true all the time is there is no deity but Allah. It's La ilaha illallah. Throughout history, from Adam to now, it has always been true. We have another episode on what is true, but I'll put it there. At no time this was untrue. At no time it's going to be untrue. It is always true. Minor true premise, again, Muhammad is Allah's messenger. Why is it minor? Because it's not all encompassing. It's just one person. And Prophet Muhammad was not known before his time. Allah is the only one who knew. Okay, so the conclusion happens here with these 2 premises. Prophet Muhammad is the role model. There's a reason. That implies the true science, true knowledge is finding out what Prophet Muhammad would do. That's the essence of knowledge model. So when you say seek knowledge, it's knowledge of the truth. Where is the knowledge of the truth? Deductive logic wise, it has to be based on Shahada, which is there is no deity but Allah, and Muhammad is the Allah's messenger. Do you see the importance of the word IQRA? It certainly is not read. This deduction process is the foundation of seeking knowledge. Because even for inductive knowledge, there is a deductive knowledge first. It would be all fine. We are hardwired to be logical. There's no doubt about that. But there's a monkey wrench thrown at us. Shaitan I give the reference 4:119. Surah Nisa on 19. He challenged. He was very angry and he promised. By the way, he did not say inshallah. Of course, it's a falsehood. Everything Shaitan says is false. But he tells you something. From every lie, you can learn a lesson. And that's a warning to liars. A wise person can figure out, can learn a lesson from your lies. So what did Shaitan say? I'll create dhalala. They say it's misguide, but let's stick to the word. Dhalala is not just misguiding, it's creating fundamentally cognitive dissonance. So humans cannot figure out what's wrong. And that's the first one that Shaitan attacks. It creates dhalala. And we'll see what dhalala is. So I will create dhalala in them, in humans, and invoke desire, empty hope, which is amanya in them. See, first, cognitive dissonance, second, desire. So the last for sex, money, and control came later on. After that, Shaitan got them by their whatever. And then he orders, the third line, I will order them and they will slit the ears of the cattle and alter Allah's creation. So in those sequence, number one, create dhalala, cognitive dissonance. Number two, invoke desire, empty hope. Why is it empty? Because it has no meaning. You can desire whatever you want, you can act on it, but it's not going to be fulfilled. Only thing that would hold true is niya. Amani is the opposite of that. Number three, order them to slit the ears of the cattle. What is that? Change the nature of animals. Right? So Allah is preparing. Shaitan is preparing. Allah is preparing by giving this verse to us, that this is what they're going to do. Number four, alter everything, Allah's creation. They will alter everything. So look around. If you're sitting on your chair, what is it made of? What is the paint? Look at everything, including the computer, or the cell phone, or the smartphone that you're looking at. Everything is artificial. What you're wearing, your shirts, pants, sandals, everything is artificial. Even when we have leather shoes, it's painted with chromium. And of course, the sole is plastic, rubber. Even if it's leather, it's glued together with artificial material. So everything has changed, but this is new. We are talking about GMO to everything else, but this number 3 and 4 is modern. It's after Newton started. Previous generations were not that stupid. So Shaitan has taken over. So let's see how dhalala occurs. It's a major premise. Often people don't have to touch it. Take the minor premise. You hear this, this scholar said this, say Newton said this, or Mufti Ming said this. It doesn't matter who it is. But that's not your reference. If you are using that reference, for sure, you're deviated. So what we have, we call that the red one, the top, a phenomenal conclusion. And you can have another guy saying something. This is, sorry. The top one is the aphenomenal, meaning coin this term to show that it has no meaning. It's irrelevant. At best, it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter how accurate it sounds like. But it's a deviation. So we have true major premise and true minor premise, and you have phenomenal conclusion. If we invoke another one, anything, it doesn't matter how righteous or wrong, it doesn't matter. Another person in there, then it's aphenomenal. That's logical. So I give an example. We have been using this example for a long time. When we first started, it was 2005. We used to say, call that Jacques Chirac, but now it's Macron. So let's use this. Major false premise is all Americans speak French. You know it's false, but let's put it there. Minor false premise is Macron is an American. Then a phenomenal conclusion, therefore Macron speaks French. See, if I ask, if you talk about just the conclusion, if you say, people will say, of course it's true. No, it's not. That's why you have to know the direction. Where did it come from? It came from the major and minor premises. They are both false. So it doesn't matter how often Macron speaks French. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be looking at it. So somebody comes to you, presents something, say, what is your source? It doesn't matter. I'm going to investigate how true it sounds. You have to say, what is the source? If source is false, both minor and major premises are false, or one of them is false, then it's gone. It is not relevant. It's not worth investigating. You just throw it out. So, Shaitan is preparing us with the second one. Remember what the second one was? Invoke desire, lust, false hope. How to do that? Their intention is bad. So if your intention is bad, it doesn't matter what premise you use. If your intention is bad, you are absolutely going to conclude something false by definition. And this is not understood because in new science, the role of intention has been omitted. We hear these funny memes that the researchers conclude whatever would satisfy the funding agency, right? But we never thought about the science behind it. Science is this. The intention is a premise. It's not very easy to grasp. But once you understand intention itself is a premise, then it becomes very clear. It doesn't matter anything, what source you're using. serves the purpose of a major false premise. And this notion is new. First time we published, it was in 2007. The book is, I'll give reference to the book. You know, the very first Hadith in book of Hadith, collection of book of Hadith in Bukhari is Innamal Amal Binniyat. Every reward is based on the intention. The very first Hadith. So here, logically, if your intention is good, you come to the right conclusion. That's the starting point. That's not enough, by the way. But it's a good starting point. But intention is bad, you're gone right there. Your IQRA has been thrown out. Nothing matters. So in this, the role of intention has to be highlighted. See, what is intention? How do you tell intention? I'm not talking about questioning others. It's ask yourself. You realize that before any conscious decision, and we decide a lot, some say 500,000 times, we're constantly deciding what to do. Every decision, every action, every email you write, every post you make, every word you utter, it has to have an intention. And you ask, what is the reason? Why are you saying this? Asking why is the most difficult question, and we never do it. We ask others because we are very quick in judging others. We want to judge people, even we judge Allah. So why did you do that? Why? To somebody else, never to yourself. So ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to please Allah? Only then it's a good deed, right there. And if it is not, right there is a seed for sin. This definition of sin, this definition of good deed, has evaded most people. So good intention is a necessary factor for seeking right knowledge, correct knowledge. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. We'll come to that. So once you make the intention, we get a good deed right away. We get 10 times more when you follow up with the action. It actually happens. See, I'm going to prayer, and that's my intention. I actually, even if I miss the prayer, right, for some reason, I get one reward anyhow. And if I catch the prayer and complete it, this is part of qadr, we get 10 times reward. On the other hand, if you are planning to do something to please anybody but Allah, it could be yourself, it could be some other person, doesn't matter. It's a seed for a sin, but it's not a sin, it's not counted against you. And this is the beauty of Islam. For making good intention, you get rewarded. For making a bad intention, you are not punished unless you follow up, and you punish only one sin. However, if you return to Allah, if you regret, you actually get 10 times punished, rewarded. So The key to this is identify at the intention level, right when you are planning, why am I doing this? By asking, why am I doing this? If it is anything but to please Allah, stop. So I found this useful. Follow the chart. We'll go to the right side first. So why am I doing this from the top? To please Allah? Yes, you get one reward. And then action completed? Yes, 10 times reward. Right? So now go to the left. To please Allah? No. Action completed? Yes. Then one sin. Action not completed? No, on the other side. Then nothing happens unless you regret. See, you're going to invest money in interest-based in a bank. And it turned out that was the intention. So it was not to please Allah, obviously. But bank was closed. So if you say, well, I'm going to come back tomorrow, then nothing happens unless you actually come back and invest. But on the other hand, he said, Subhanallah, the bank is closed. It's giving me a sign. I don't want to invest. I regret. Regret itself is not enough. You might regret it because the bank is closed. That's not good enough. Regret in fear of Allah. Then you get one reward right away. So here on the negative side, on the no side, you went down and you collected no sin. You actually get a reward for not doing it by regretting to Allah. Allah loves when you regret. Then you sustained, say, example of the bank, you are not going to invest in interest-making venture. You sustained. Then again, to please Allah, you get 10 times rewarded. Something that started off with sin actually became 10 times rewarded virtue. So now, coming back to deduction, if Shahada is the only true first major and minor premise, Quran and Hadith is the only true source. Major source, Quran, minor source is Hadith. So everything that starts with Quran in the context of Hadith is the only one that will give you a phenomenal conclusion. That's what we call the knowledge model. You see the triangle down below. Quran, then Hadith, then we call it scaling, time scaling. Then you get decision. Everything has to be time scaled. And that's why without research, which is what, bring it to today's time, you cannot do any decision. No decision should be made without time scaling. Take anything. In Prophet's time, there was no porn internet, there was no porn, there was no whiskey, there was no medicine, artificial medicine. Right? So how would you conclude? There was no vaccine. So how would you conclude without doing the time scale? And how would you do time scale if you do not know the process? Without deduction, there is no L. It's zero. Let's look at the top left side, what you call the Satanic model or Iraq invasion model. where we decide first. We're going to Iraq, and we disinformation. What is next disinformation? What is disinformation? Remember, in Iraq case, Saddam Hussein has Al-Qaeda tie, and he's buying, what is it, yellow cake from uranium or from Niger. Disinformation is a plain out lie. To justify the decision, you planted stories, false stories. Then opacity. What is the opacity? You create more propaganda. Israel is mastermind of this. Israel literally personifies this Satanic model, the top left side. Then when they are busted, they said there is no link between Al-Qaeda and Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Everybody knew this. Iraq was not going to do weapons of mass destruction. Then they say, justify. How do they justify? Oh, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy anyway. He had to be replaced. So that's the model. So what you do, constantly, you always use that model. And this is purely from Shaitan. So these guys have no fear of Quran. Quran 459 tells you, obey Allah, obey Rasul, and Ulul Amr, whoever is in authority, legitimate authority, not some elected president through Tawhid system. And even then, if there's a dispute, you go back to Quran and Hadith. You go back to Allah and His Prophet. That's 459. You see, there is no room for Imam. It's Ulul Amr. Even it could be Khomeini, it would be Hikmatullah in Afghanistan, but we're not doing that. We put Imam 1, Imam 2. There, nowhere there is any basis to invoke any Imam in the process. You could not possibly, even your supreme leader said that he would be discarded if there's a dispute with Quran and Hadith by 459. But these guys have no fear. They invoke dead Imams. Then 465 is even clearer. He said, you have to put Prophet as the judge. And if you do not do that, if you do not be happy with that, happily accept the judgment of the Prophet, you're not even mu'min. But these guys have no fear. They constantly invoke Imam 1, Imam 2, this sheikh, I'm going to go to internet sheikh. Mufti Mink said that, therefore it's true. All of them are false. That's the new time dogma. Only one correct decision is when you use the Ijtihad model. See, bottom left, Ijtihad model, Quran, Hadith, and scaling. And use Quran, see in the context of Hadith, not your own interpretation, not even interpretation of anybody else. Interpretation by Hadith, then your time scale, that's your correct decision. Everything else is false. So that's how important this the term IQRA is. Scientifically, there cannot be more than one role model. It's very simple. It's very logical. You cannot have deduction with 3 points. You cannot have deduction with 1 point. So there goes the Quranists would have only 1 point. It becomes totally random. Even the supreme leader, the husband is a good one because most of the time a woman is spared from doing all this research. Ask your husband, get his opinion, because righteous husband would know. But even there, a woman's obligation is, a ordinary citizen's obligation is to compare that what would happen with Quran and Hadith. If there is a deviation, you discard, your husband discard the supreme leader, you dispute with them, and he said, this is the correct one, or be convinced. Prophet was once asked if his companions' actions are an evidence. This is very interesting case. Only recently, I was confronted by a brother that, Prophet said, follow the example of the Sahaba, of the companions. It's very easy to be misled. But what if the Sahaba themselves had a disagreement? We know that they did not agree. For instance, first time Abu Bakr was only one who wanted to go to war. So which one do you follow, Abu Bakr or the rest of them? So it doesn't make any sense. When Omar is confronted by a lady that this decree on Mahr is not Islamic, he accepted it. So are we going to sit there and say, oh, subhanAllah, how dare you cross Omar? He's a Sahaba. So all this nonsense we have to put aside. Say, no, why are you saying this? Following example does not mean they're evidence. They are not your point on the cognition axis. They're good guys, of course. But even the process of selecting your leader, they're different in four Khalifa's time. And those are righteous Khalifa, righteous leaders. Even then, there's disagreements. Which one do you follow? It's absurd. So we have to always stick to Quran and Hadith. So Prophet made it clear, and there's an ambiguity. Sahaba or anybody else, or Mufti Mink, or Yusuf Hamza, they do not become an example. Jolani, it doesn't matter who it is. They are not a role model. Your father is not your role model. Role model is only one. That's Prophet Muhammad. Now, let's talk about the most subservient group, subservient to Shaitan. That's Bani Israel. Shaitan is the ultimate of bad behavior in any individual. And Bani Israel is the ultimate. These are the counter example of good guys, right? The Antichrist, so to speak. Bani Israel is, as a group, is the negative example we can have. Sadly, Muslims today, as predicted by the Prophet, follow Bani Israel footstep to footstep. So in Bani Israel, what is the characteristic of this? Yahud, they had bad intention. They were deliberately using cognitive dissonance. Their intention is, remember I just said, if your intention is bad, you're gone. And that's the worst group you can have. These are the cursed one. Allah called them cursed. Maghzub. Allah is very angry at them. And that's the group. They know. Their intention is simply bad. They know the truth. Nasara, on the other hand, the so-called Christians, they had good intention, but that was not enough. Remember I said intention is necessary, but not sufficient condition. But how did they invoke cognitive dissonance? Because lack of akal. For instance, they invoked Trinity. Shia people invoked 12 imams. Sunni people invoke one of 4 imams, whatever it is. These are all classic cases of cognitive dissonance. They have good intention. Talk about tabligh, good intention. But they did not have the akal to question, why am I doing this? Why am I taking Sheikh Ilyas as an example? Why am I taking Abu Hanifa, Malik, Humble, whatever, as an example, as a role model? This akal Lack of this akal made them dhalin. And what is akal? This is what we call consensus logic. It's based on the ability to use IQRA is akal. Akal is not common sense. It's your ability to deduce from Quran in the context of Hadith. Is akal. What happens with akal? If you do not use akal, you are reduced to the worst of creatures. Allah said that in 8:22. Allah calls them dumb and deaf, and they do not use akal. In Surah Mulk, verse 10, Allah said, the people of hellfire would regret. Had you listened or used akal, would not be in hellfire. So either listen to righteous people, either listen to your prophet and the inheritor of the prophet, the biggest alim, or use your akal. There's no excuse. Because everybody has the ability to use akal. And if they do not, they become lowliest of creatures. Now, IQRA has characterized humans. We were talking about this, that, how do you characterize? Good leader, right? In the West, whoever has the potential of making most money, right? Whoever the establishment and money God selects is the leader. In Islam, the best quality, Prophet said, is the ability to do IQRA. People mistranslate that as saying that the one who has the sweetest voice, right, the Qari Sahib, they become the leader. That means Abdul Basit, for instance, who did not even have a beard, he becomes the leader because he has the sweetest voice. And mashallah, these days, they are even using female voices and they are all gushing over it. Beautiful voice, sister. That's not what IQRA means. IQRA is not recitation. IQRA means the ability to deduce from Quran in the context of Hadith. The ability to deduce makes you leader. That's number one quality Prophet mentioned. Furthermore, Prophet said, cure to ignorance is to ask question. This is very well known. Even if your intention is good, it's not enough. You can look up the source of this hadith. A Sahaba had a wet dream and he was sick. Other Sahaba told him to take a shower, obligatory shower. He took and he died. And Prophet Muhammad castigated them, saying that you killed him. Isn't cute ignorance to ask? Meaning, why did you give me bad advice? Your intention is good. That's not enough. You killed him. Can you imagine Prophet telling his own Sahaba that he killed him? It's a very big thing. So asking question is mandatory. However, we know that Bani Israel used to be notorious for asking questions. What is the difference? Their intention was not good. Remember you asked, intention is bad, then you're gone. So it's not enough that you ask question. It has to be real question. What are real questions? The one that will bring you closer to Allah. I'm asking because I want to know so I can be close to Allah. I'm not asking to cross you or cross somebody else. I'm not asking questions so I can prove myself right. Those are Bani Israel questions. Bani Israel questions will consolidate your ignorance and make you more arrogant. This consolidates all the questions on the top. They emerge from true intention, good intention. And all of them are good. Ultimately, you'll be guided. For each section, these are called mantik questions. At the end, you'll end up making the correct decision, which is the process is called aql. Aql literally in Arabic means tightening it. The ultimate decision has to be yes or no, right? And that one is done through asking questions, all these questions. On the other hand, if your intention is bad, only question you'll be asking is Bani Israel type questions. And that's the epitome of ignorance. Seeking knowledge is an obligation. And this is the Bani Israel model. If you ask more initial questions, you start off with false premises. They always have false premises. Trapping questions. They don't stop there. They look for evidence that will give them basis for supporting the false premise. At the end, they will add more pride in their ignorance. And their decision would always support the suspicion. So you hear so many times that Subhanallah, Allah has guided me. How? Because I was spying on somebody and found out this evidence. No, spying is not a starting point. And that's why it's completely haram to put surveillance videos. You cannot spy on people. Why? Because Quran 49:12 tells you that's not a starting point. So you cannot ask questions in violation of Allah's order and expect you to be guided. You were misguided right from the beginning. So anything you see, perceive, is actually consolidation of your ignorance. The intention-based model, what we call the intention-based model, is the one starts off with intention to please Allah. Why am I doing this? So I can do things so they are more things that make me closer to Allah. So what do you look for? Quranic verses. You see, there are two types of ayah, two types of sign. Quran has all those ayahs. They are literally meaning signs. Visible signs, what are they? Natural things, not artificial things. Natural things. That's why lab experiment is not an ayah. Why? Because lab experiment is controlled. Control is not natural. Practically nobody gets this point. Control lab experiment is not an ayah. It's not a basis. It's not an evidence. Then you see in the context of hadith. Then you do time scaling. And then you decide. And this is the essence of IQRA. This process is ijtihad. If you make the correct decision, you're rewarded 10 times. Even if the decision was wrong, somewhere it went wary, you still get one reward. But it's a must. And nobody gets this point. Very few people get it. So if you made a decision and later on you realize that, oops, I made a mistake, you do astaghfir and you do purification of intention. Then you start all over again. That's how we learn from our mistakes. We do not learn anything from our mistake if we are repeating it with more arrogance. That's shaitan. Here's a classic example, very recent time. Why aren't Afghan women allowed to use voice and show face? You see, what is the assumption? Assumption is true, but it's not true. First-hand information, it was never the case. What was banned is prostitution. A follow-up of that prostitution is, we're not prostituting, we're just entertaining. That was banned. It wasn't the voice. It's a singing voice. It's this dance and music. Show face was never a case. Only recently, my daughter has asked, whoa, is that the case? Of course not. It's not like Saudi Arabia. Nobody controls here. Yet, that's the question. First question, from Muslims. So if that dogma question is not bad enough, here's the dogma answer. Because men they are insecure in Afghanistan. So in Quran 49:6, Allah said, if a fasik comes to you with an information, verify it. Who is fasik? The one who has broken agreement with Allah. So today's media, do we have any doubt they are fasik? Of course, 100% of them. It's not even 99.99. 100% of them are fasik. Yet you're taking that information, their information, and considering it as true. And then you're adding more ignorance by saying, because men, they are insecure. So dogma does not get you anywhere. It's IQRA that does. Deviation from IQRA gets you nowhere. This example is from the robot. Here, do you see the robot? It's from 2002, during occupation time. US donated a $200,000 robot to train these doctors and medical students how to give birth, right? Do you see that? Do you see which side they're facing? His robot is the so-called pregnant robot, is lying down there, and they're looking at somewhere else. And who is that picture to make this very point? What dogma culture has made to us. So we took that picture into our 2007 book, Economics of Intangibles. This is the one first time in modern history, somebody talked about the role of intention on technology development. Check it out. Nobody else did. New science has deprived us from this analysis, that intention matters completely in any branch. Nobody mentioned it. We did. And we make this point very clear with this iconic picture from Afghanistan. And that was over 20 years ago. Final point, stupidity is a sin. Perhaps the gravest sin. It sounds extreme. Sounds extreme, but it's very logical. Ilm is the greatest, it's a great virtue, perhaps the greatest one. First, induction, right after declaration of creation of Adam as the first Khalifah, Allah taught him ilm. Verse 2, Baqarah, verse 31. Ilm is the third most used word in Quran, right after Allah and Rabb. Imagine. Have you heard of another book that uses the word ilm, which is science, as the third most used word? I have not. Maybe you have. Tell me. Quran is the one. Ilm is the use of aql. There is no ilm without using aql. What is stupidity then? It's not using aql. We said, or Allah said in verse 22 of Allah and Rabb, 8:22, that whoever does not use aql is the lowliest of creatures in Allah's eyes. So I make this point. This is how Dajjal is prepared, made. Stupidity, first, give an example. Keep lights on all night, right? You know, in the West, all lights are all on. They take pride in Google NASA, picture NASA at night. You see all the civilized part of the world, they have all lights on at night. That's how we define civilization. So we call that stupidity. Why? Nobody needs light at night. Maybe only the thieves. But no rational person would be needing light, especially in an empty room. So that's stupidity. Number two, electric light is harmful. I did this analysis in 2015, 10 years ago. Nobody knew at the time that electric light is scientifically harmful. Even though there were publications back in 2005, even 5 minutes of artificial light can cause you 30% more chance of having breast cancer, all these publications, but nobody pays attention. But the science of it, nobody did it until 2015. I did it in my first book on pharmaceutical engineering. So electric light is harmful. So you are actually putting something harmful, which is not needed. That is stupidity square. Then you are poor and can't afford electric bills. Many third world countries, electric bill is so high that they struggle. They have to borrow money to pay the bill. The electricity gets cut off. Bills cut off. Electricity gets cut off because they could not pay the bill. That is stupidity cube. Then you are Muslim and you know wasting is haram. It's in Quran. It's not a disputed thing. Prophet Muhammad says, even when you are making wuzu with river water, you have to do optimization. Even with river water. And what are you doing? So that's stupidity to the power 4. Then it doesn't stop there. You see yourself as alim and consider your opinion as the ultimate. Meaning, who do you know? You don't even have a degree in ilm. You did not go to madrasa. I know better than anybody else. That is stupidity to the power 5. This stupidity to the 5 guys, they're like cult leaders. They call themselves God, Christ, or Khalifah, themselves. I have come across people who wanted me to pledge allegiance to them. The dumbest people are the most arrogant. They wanted me to pledge allegiance. So this is what Shaitan has done to us. They created Dajjal among all of us. So how do you turn that around? How do you create real scientists, ulama, real ulama? So we have to replace that stupidity to the power 5 to knowledge or aql to the power 5 and 6. So this is a sequence. Stop waste. Number 1, that's aql, because the Quran says so. With any aql, you'd know that. Stop right there. Then number 2, stop artificial. Then aql square. Replace with real. So what will you do, brother? There is only electricity. So what? Then turn it off. Get a Bezox candle. Why do you need light, brother? Use moonlight. already in Akal to the part, Akal cubic. Turn waste into value-added products. Take all the waste, and we talk about, in all my books, we talk about how to do that. Akal to the power 4. Maximize production with innovative techniques. Akal to the power 5. Sell knowledge, not raw materials. It's so painful to see Saudi Arabia selling crude oil and buying refined oil from India, from all places. It's so brutal, so ruthless to see Afghanistan selling raw material to China and buy their refined products for 1,000 times more price. What has happened to us? We have all become stupidity to the power 5. We have to replace that. It's not very difficult at all. It's actually the easiest thing. I tell people, quite often I face the question, it's going to be taking hundreds of years. I said, what? What is the most important research topic, research express in the West? Most important is medical. Isn't it true? Check it out. The biggest money-making operation is chemicals, and biggest user of chemicals is medical industry, even bigger than defense. So medical, if you can replace the medical with hijama and honey, what? You do not believe in those? You don't read Quran? You don't read Hadith? No, you have no iman. So if you can replace the most money-making venture with simple honey and black seed and hijama and Quran, that's the most expensive one. Do you think you cannot replace their drone technology, their flying technology? They are nothing. They are nothing compared to medical one. So get back to reality. We have become so stupid and so obsessed with the West that we forget that Allah has given us solution. And not getting Allah's solution is making us kafir. We are actually violating our pledge of allegiance to Allah and His messenger. Because we want a shortcut. Because we are fascinated by the West. We do not have any confidence in ourselves or in Allah. Now, a simple question I ask, can you reach this level of knowledge without knowing science with dollar sign? See, an imam in Bosnia was asked, should we have vaccine? He said, well, how do I know? I'm not a doctor. And to his credit, he at least acknowledged he doesn't know. Talk to anybody else, they give fatwa. Of course it is. I've seen fatwa that during fasting, you can actually inject vaccine. Can you imagine? Vaccine is a poison. And the poison comes from shaitan. It's written there. All the medication comes from shaitan. It's written there. And just Google any of them and see what kind of poison it is. And you are doing that during fasting, and you are saying it's halal. So what happens with this ulama? They do not know science. Science does. How would you know if it's halal if you don't even know the ingredient? They know nothing. Yet they are giving fatwa. So this is all, they do not have, they have knowledge. Which knowledge do they have? Do they have akal? If they had akal, the first thing they will be asking, why am I believing something that the West gave? Didn't they just bomb us for 20 years or 45 years? So they don't have akal. Start of Islam, it starts with akal. So we're not even traveling the same path. We're gone way down the ignorance path, very long time. To sum it up, deductive logic, Allah is al-Haq. He's the epitome of truth. anything from Allah is the truth. And Allah has given us truth in two ways: readable, so-called readable, which is deductible, deducible. You can deduce. These are signs of Allah. This is the ayah of Allah in the Quran. The visible ayah, on the other hand, are limited. Whatever we see, but natural. That's our source of logic. So once more, we start with Quran, we use Hadith, we deduce, we do the scaling for the decision in every action.